The night I was born, the world seemed to conspire against me. A violent storm raged outside the private hospital, rain lashing against the windows like an angry fist. Inside, the air was thick with tension as my mother's screams echoed through the sterile halls of the maternity ward. Lightning illuminated the room in jagged flashes, casting eerie shadows on the walls. It felt as if nature itself knew that something tragic was about to unfold. When the first cry pierced the chaos, it was strong and defiant, Elena's cry. My twin sister emerged into the world with vitality, her rosy cheeks glowing under the harsh fluorescent lights. The doctors cheered, their faces breaking into relieved smiles. "A perfect baby," one of them exclaimed, lifting her high for my parents to see. Their joy was palpable. Tears streamed down my mother's face as she reached out to cradle Elena in her arms. My father beamed with pride, his voice trembling as he whispered, "She's beautiful. She's everything we hoped for." But then came my turn. I arrived moments later, fragile and silent. Too small, too weak, too imperfect. My skin was pale, almost translucent, and my breathing shallow, like a flickering candle struggling against the wind. The room fell eerily quiet as the medical team scrambled around me. Panic rippled through their movements as they rushed me to an incubator. Through the blur of frantic hands and machines, I caught glimpses of my parents' faces, or rather their absence. They didn't follow me. Not even once did they glance toward the glass where I lay, fighting for every breath. Instead, I heard their voices, sharp and cutting, slicing through the hum of equipment. "We can't keep her," my mother sobbed, her tone laced with desperation. "What will people say? How could this happen?" My father's response was colder still, devoid of emotion. "She's not what we wanted. We have Elena. That's enough." Enough. Just one word, but it carried the weight of rejection. Enough to crush any hope I might have had of belonging. They signed the papers without hesitation, abandoning me before I'd even taken my first real breath. No embrace, no kiss, no whispered promise of love. To them, I was nothing more than a mistake, a burden they refused to carry. And so, I became invisible, erased from their lives before I'd truly begun. But fate has its own way of intervening. Amidst the chaos of that stormy night, there was one person who saw me, not just as a nameless infant tucked away in a cold metal box, but as someone worthy of life. Her name was Helen, a retired nurse who had returned to the hospital that evening to help with the influx of patients caused storm-related emergencies. When she passed by the nursery, her gaze lingered on the incubator where I lay. She must have seen the fragility in my tiny form, the way the machines beeped insistently beside me, keeping track of my faltering heartbeat. Without hesitation, Helen stepped forward. "This child needs someone," she said firmly to the attending doctor. "If her parents won't take her, I will." Her decision saved me. Helen brought me home to a modest apartment filled with worn furniture and faded photographs. It wasn't much, but it was warm, unlike the sterile environment of the hospital or the cold indifference of my biological parents. She cared for me tirelessly, staying up through countless nights when I struggled to breathe, holding me close when fever racked my body. Though money was scarce and resources limited, Helen gave me everything she had: food, shelter, and most importantly, love. Yet even as I grew under her care, I couldn't escape the shadow of that fateful night. There were moments when I stared at the cracks in the ceiling above my crib, wondering why I had been left behind. Why I wasn't enough. Those thoughts haunted me silently, shaping the foundation of my identity long before I could fully understand them. And so, my journey began, not with the warmth of familial bonds, but with the sting of abandonment. As I lay in that incubator, bathed in the soft glow of artificial light, Helen stood nearby, her eyes filled with compassion. In that moment, though I couldn't yet comprehend it, she became my lifeline. My anchor in a world that had already turned its back on me. Growing up under Helen's care wasn't easy. Life was a constant battle against poverty, and the world outside our small apartment often felt like an unforgiving place. I remember wearing hand-me-down clothes that were patched so many times they barely resembled their original form. My lunchbox, a faded tin container, always held simple meals: a piece of bread, some boiled vegetables, or leftover rice from the night before. It never compared to the colorful, elaborate lunches other kids brought to school. The teasing started early, sharp words cutting deeper than any blade ever could. "Look at her," one boy sneered during recess when I was 8. "Her clothes look like rags. Does she even have parents?" His friends laughed, pointing fingers as if I were some kind of circus act. That day, someone scribbled on my shirt with a marker while I sat alone in the corner of the classroom, "No parent child." Tears burned in my eyes, but I didn't cry, not there, not in front of them. Instead, I ran home, clutching the fabric tightly around me, trying to hide both the writing and my shame. Helen found me curled up on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Without saying a word, she pulled me into her arms, rocking me gently as she whispered, "You are my greatest treasure, Lily. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." Her words soothed me then, just as they always did. But deep down the question lingered, why didn't I have parents? Why had no one come looking for me? The truth hit me like a freight train when I turned 10. It was late evening and Helen had invited Dr. Marcus, the same doctor who'd been present at my birth, to visit. They sat in the dimly lit living room, their voices low but urgent. I wasn't supposed to overhear, but curiosity got the better of me. I stood by the doorway, hidden in shadow, listening intently. "She's doing well," Helen said softly. "But sometimes I wonder, do you think she suspects anything?" Dr. Marcus sighed heavily. "It's only a matter of time before she finds out. Those people, they abandoned her without a second thought. All because she was weak." My heart stopped. Abandoned? Wait. The words echoed in my mind, each syllable slicing through whatever fragile sense of belonging I'd managed to build. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I couldn't move. I stayed frozen until they noticed me standing there, wide-eyed and trembling. Helen rushed over, her face pale with guilt. "Lily, sweetheart," she began, reaching for me, but I backed away. For the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Fear that I would hate her for keeping this secret. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I wanted to protect you." But protection couldn't undo the damage. That night, I lay awake staring at the cracks in the ceiling again, tears streaming silently down my cheeks. The realization consumed me, I hadn't been lost or forgotten. I had been discarded, thrown away like trash. And all because I wasn't strong enough, perfect enough, worthy enough. Life went on, though nothing felt the same after that. Every illness, every fever, every moment of weakness reminded me of what I supposedly lacked. Helen continued to care for me tirelessly, but her presence became both a comfort and a reminder of everything I'd lost. She grew older, frailer, her once steady hands now trembling slightly as she prepared meals or tucked me into bed. Still, she never stopped loving me, never stopped telling me how special I was. And then, when I was 14, the unthinkable happened. Helen passed away quietly in her sleep, leaving behind an emptiness so profound it swallowed me whole. I remember sitting beside her bed, holding her cold hand, willing her to wake up. But she didn't. She couldn't. The woman who had saved me, raised me, loved me unconditionally was gone. Forever. For weeks, I wandered through life in a haze, unable to process the magnitude of my loss. Our tiny apartment felt suffocating, every corner haunted by memories of her laughter, her kindness, her sacrifices. I sold most of our belongings just to afford rent, moving into a cramped studio apartment downtown. To survive, I took any job I could find, cleaning houses, washing dishes, delivering newspapers. Each task chipped away at my dignity, but I refused to give up. Survival became my sole focus. Yet beneath the surface, anger simmered. Anger at the world, at fate, at the people who had abandoned me. Most of all, anger at my biological parents, for rejecting me, for erasing me from their lives as if I'd never existed. The resentment festered, growing stronger with each passing year. By the time I turned 18, it had hardened into something unshakable, a vow. Standing before Helen's grave one rainy afternoon, I clenched my fists and whispered aloud, "I won't let them get away with this. I'll find them. I'll make them pay for what they've done." As the rain soaked through my clothes, mingling with my tears, I felt a strange resolve settle over me. This was no longer just about pain or revenge, it was about justice. About reclaiming the life they had stolen from me. By the time I turned 18, I had learned to navigate life on my own. The years of hardship had hardened me in ways I never imagined possible. I worked long hours at a small diner downtown, serving coffee and wiping tables for customers who barely acknowledged my existence. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept me alive, and that was all that mattered. One evening, my manager handed me a flyer advertising an extravagant gala hosted by one of the city's wealthiest families. "They need extra servers," he said, glancing at me with a mix of pity and indifference. "It pays well. Think you can handle it?" I hesitated. Events like this were far removed from my reality, worlds where people sipped champagne and laughed about trivialities while I struggled just to make ends meet. But money was tight, and the promise of decent pay was too tempting to pass up. So I agreed. The night of the gala arrived, and as I stepped into the grand ballroom, I felt like an outsider invading a foreign land. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above, casting prisms of light across the polished marble floors. Women in designer gowns swept past me, their heels clicking sharply against the ground, while men in tailored suits exchanged casual pleasantries. The air smelled faintly of expensive perfume and freshly cut flowers. I adjusted my plain black uniform self-consciously, acutely aware of how out of place I looked among such opulence. My job was simple: carry trays of hors d'oeuvres, refill drinks, and stay invisible. I moved through the crowd mechanically, avoiding eye contact and focusing solely on completing each task. But then, something caught my attention: a familiar laugh, light and melodic, drifting over the hum of conversation. My heart skipped a beat. That laugh, it sounded exactly like Elena's. I froze mid-step, nearly dropping the tray in my hands. Slowly I turned toward the source of the sound. There they were, my family. Or rather, their family. They stood together near the center of the room, radiating wealth and privilege. Elena looked stunning in a floor-length emerald gown, her golden hair cascading down her back like sunlight. Beside her, our mother held court, her every gesture exuding elegance and authority. And then there was our father, his expression stern yet commanding, as if he owned not only the room but everyone in it. For a moment I couldn't breathe. All the memories I'd tried so hard to suppress came rushing back. The hospital incubator, Helen's comforting arms, the crushing realization that I'd been discarded without a second thought. Anger surged within me, hot and fierce, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was my chance, not just to confront them but to see firsthand the lives they had chosen over mine. Summoning every ounce of courage I possessed, I approached them cautiously. My palms were sweaty, my legs trembling beneath me, but I refused to let fear stop me. As I drew closer, Elena noticed me first. Her perfectly arched eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "Can we help you?" she asked coolly, her tone dripping with disdain. Before I could respond, I locked eyes with our mother. She stared at me blankly, clearly unimpressed by my disheveled appearance. Then, summoning what little strength I had left, I spoke the words I'd rehearsed countless times in my head. "Mom? Dad?" My voice wavered slightly, but I pressed on. "It's me. Lily." Silence fell over their group like a heavy curtain. For a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of recognition in our mother's eyes. But it vanished almost instantly, replaced by cold indifference. "Who are you?" she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't bother us. We don't know you." Our father glanced at me briefly, his lip curling in disgust. "Clearly some imposter trying to cause trouble," he muttered dismissively before turning away. Elena, however, took a different approach. A cruel smile spread across her face as she scanned me from head to toe. "You? Our sister?" She laughed derisively, drawing curious glances from nearby guests. "Look at you. You're nothing but a poor waitress pretending to be someone important. Pathetic." Her words hit me like a slap, but I refused to let them break me. Instead, I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze with unwavering determination. "I may not have your fancy clothes or your perfect life," I said quietly, though my voice carried an edge of steel. "But I know the truth. And one day everyone else will too." With that, I turned on my heel and walked away, ignoring the whispers and stares following me. Outside, rain poured down in sheets, soaking me to the bone. Tears mingled with the rainwater streaming down my face as I stood under the dim glow of a street lamp. Clenching my fists, I whispered fiercely into the stormy night, "I won't rest until you pay for what you've done." That night under the rain, as tears mixed with the downpour, I made a vow, not just to myself but to Helen's memory. She had taught me resilience, love, and the importance of standing up for what was right. Now it was my turn to fight back, not just for me but for every child who had ever been abandoned or erased by those meant to protect them. The first step was gathering evidence. I knew the truth about my parents' betrayal wasn't enough. I needed proof, something undeniable, concrete. The next morning, after hours of restless tossing and turning, I went to see Dr. Marcus, the same doctor who had delivered me all those years ago. He was older now, his once dark hair streaked with gray, but his eyes still held the same kindness I remembered from childhood. "Lily," he said softly when I walked into his office. "I wondered if you'd come someday." I sat across from him, gripping the edge of my chair tightly. "You knew the truth all along, didn't you? About why they left me?" He sighed heavily, leaning back in his seat. "Yes. Your parents, they signed papers relinquishing their rights to you before you were even stabilized. They wanted nothing to do with you because..." His voice trailed off, weighed down by guilt. "Because I wasn't perfect," I finished for him, bitterness lacing my tone. Dr. Marcus nodded reluctantly. "It's cruel, yes. But it happened. And unfortunately there are records, a paper trail that proves everything." For the first time in years, hope flickered inside me. If these documents existed, then I could expose the lies my family had built their lives upon. With renewed determination, I hired a lawyer specializing in children's rights. Together, we began digging deeper into my past, uncovering not only the hospital records but also something far more sinister: scandals involving my father's company. As it turned out, my father's wealth wasn't earned through honest means. Over the years, he had engaged in corrupt deals, bribing officials and exploiting workers to maintain his empire. One particular scandal involved embezzling funds meant for building hospitals, including the very one where I was born. The irony wasn't lost on me. My birthplace, the site of my abandonment, had been tainted by his greed. But exposing these truths came at a cost. Word spread quickly that I was investigating my family, and soon shadows began following me wherever I went. Late one evening, as I walked home from the library carrying stacks of research materials, two men cornered me in an alley. Their faces were obscured by hoods, but their intentions were clear. "You need to stop this nonsense," one growled, shoving me against the wall. "Or else things might get worse, for you and your friends." Fear surged through me, but I refused to back down. "Tell my parents they can't silence me," I spat, my voice trembling yet defiant. Miraculously, a passerby heard the commotion and intervened, forcing the men to flee. Shaken but resolute, I realized the stakes had risen higher than ever before. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about justice. Finally, the day came when I had everything I needed: medical records, legal documents, emails detailing my father's corruption, and even audio recordings of conversations between him and his business partners. Armed with irrefutable evidence, I uploaded everything online, attaching a heartfelt letter explaining my story. Within hours, the internet exploded. Headlines screamed, "Wealthy family abandons sick newborn for perfection." Social media erupted with outrage as people shared screenshots of the documents and videos proving my claims. Comment sections flooded with messages of support for me and condemnation for my so-called family. Journalists swarmed outside my parents' mansion, demanding answers. For the first time, the world saw my parents and Elena for who they truly were: selfish, ruthless individuals willing to destroy anyone who stood in their way. The fallout was swift and devastating. My father's company crumbled overnight as investors pulled out en masse. Scandal after scandal surfaced, each revelation chipping away at the facade of perfection they had carefully constructed. Elena, once revered in high society, became a pariah. Her friends abandoned her, her social media accounts were hacked and mocked, and invitations to exclusive events ceased entirely. Desperate, my parents tried to reach out to me. At first, they sent letters begging for forgiveness, claiming they had acted out of fear rather than malice. When those went unanswered, they showed up unannounced at my apartment. I opened the door to find them kneeling on the floor, tears streaming down their faces. "Please, Lily," my mother pleaded, her voice breaking. "We'll do anything to make this right. We're your family, we love you." I stared at them, my heart a fortress of ice. Well, they dared speak of love after everything they'd done? Slowly, I closed the door in their faces without uttering a single word. Later that week, I received a call from Elena. Unlike my parents, she didn't beg or cry. Instead, she sneered, her tone dripping with venom. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "This isn't over, Lily. You'll regret ruining our lives." Her words didn't scare me. In fact, they only fueled my resolve. By exposing their crimes, I hadn't just sought vengeance, I had reclaimed my dignity. No longer would I let them define who I was or dictate my worth. I was stronger now, braver, and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Standing alone in my tiny apartment, surrounded by remnants of my past, I allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in my life I felt free. Free from their control, free from their judgment, and most importantly, free to create my own future. The last time I saw my parents, they were on their knees, tears streaming down their faces. My mother's voice trembled as she begged, "Please, Lily, we'll do anything. We're your family. Let us make this right." Elena stood behind them, her usual arrogance replaced by desperation. Her mascara-streaked face was a mask of regret, or perhaps just fear of losing everything she had ever known. "We're sisters," she whispered, her voice cracking. "We can still be a family, can't we?" For a moment, I let their words hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to feel something: anger, pity, even sadness, but all I felt was emptiness. They had chosen their path long ago, and now they expected me to forgive them? To forget everything they had done? I looked at them one final time, taking in the sight of their brokenness. Once they had been untouchable, powerful, wealthy, revered. Now, they were shadows of who they used to be, brought low by their own greed and cruelty. But no matter how far they had fallen, it wasn't enough. Forgiveness wasn't something I could give, not to people who had erased me from their lives without a second thought. You chose perfection over me, I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. You chose status, money, reputation, everything except love. Don't ask me for forgiveness now. It's too late. With that, I turned my back on them. I didn't look back, not once, as I walked away. The sound of their sobs faded into the distance, swallowed by the cold night air. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. Free from their expectations, free from their judgment, and free from the weight of their betrayal. In the weeks that followed, I poured all my energy into creating something meaningful. A legacy for Helen, the woman who had saved me when no one else would. Using the money I earned from interviews and media appearances, I founded a center for abandoned children, naming it after her, the Helen Haven. It was more than just a shelter. It was a place where kids like me could find love, hope, and a chance to rewrite their stories. Every brick laid, every wall painted, every bed placed in those rooms carried a piece of Helen's spirit. I remembered the countless nights she stayed awake caring for me, the way she held me close when I cried, the unwavering belief she had in my worth. Now, through this center, I hope to pass that same love and strength on to others. As word spread about the Haven, support poured in from unexpected places. Strangers donated supplies, volunteers offered their time, and former foster children shared their stories online, inspiring others to seek help. Slowly but surely, the center grew into a beacon of hope, a testament to resilience and the power of unconditional love. One quiet morning, I visited Helen's grave. The sun rose gently behind me, casting golden light over the simple headstone. Kneeling before it, I traced the engraved letters of her name with my fingers. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "You gave me a home when I had none. You taught me what it means to belong. And now, because of you, I found my purpose." I paused, letting the silence settle around me. Then, with a soft smile, I added, "Family isn't about blood. It's about love. The kind of love you gave me, unconditionally and without hesitation. I'll carry that with me forever." Standing up, I took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the rising sun on my face. For so long, I had carried the weight of abandonment, anger, and pain. But now, I was ready to move forward, to embrace the future I had fought so hard to build. As I walked away from the grave, I felt lighter, freer, and more alive than ever before. My journey hadn't been easy, but it had shaped me into someone stronger, braver, and more determined. I had faced the truth, confronted my past, and emerged victorious, not through revenge but through resilience. And though I would always carry the scars of my childhood, I knew they no longer defined me. The world wasn't perfect and neither was I. But standing there, under the vast sky, I realized something profound. I didn't need to be perfect to be worthy. I didn't need anyone else's approval to know my value. All I needed was the courage to keep moving forward, and the knowledge that, no matter what, I was never truly alone.